Welcome to Iraqi Dinar Update, your go-to source for the latest news, expert insights, and real-time developments on Iraq's currency, economy, and financial reforms. Whether you're a long-time investor or just curious about the dinar, you're in the right place. The geopolitical landscape of the Middle East has once again taken center stage, and with it comes speculation, concern, and hope surrounding Iraq's long-awaited monetary reform, particularly the potential revaluation, RV, of the Iraqi dinar. One of the latest catalysts stirring the conversation is the recent escalation between the United States and Iran. Specifically, the reported attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities by the U.S., followed by consequential reactions from Iran's government and parliament, including threats to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Amid all this tension, many observers and analysts have questioned whether this brewing conflict could derail or delay Iraq's monetary reform process. However, voices from within the dinar community, including the well-known commentator Mark Z, offer a strikingly different interpretation of events. According to Mark Z, the prevailing belief among several of his sources is that rather than delaying the RV, the current situation involving Iran might actually accelerate the process. It seems counterintuitive at first. After all, one would assume that increased regional instability would push Iraq's financial and political leaders to take a cautious stance. However, the perspective presented by Mark Z and echoed by other insiders paints a picture in which this very chaos acts as a catalyst for moving forward with long-overdue reforms. Mark Z relays that he is being told by multiple sources that the aftermath of the U.S. attacks on Iran's nuclear infrastructure is not only being monitored closely by decision-makers, but is seen as creating the right environment for concluding the final steps in Iraq's financial reform agenda. This interpretation rests on the belief that disruption in Iran weakens the broader resistance to monetary reform in Iraq. Over the years, Iran's influence in Iraq has been a major factor in slowing the country's economic independence and integration with global financial systems. From banking sanctions to illicit smuggling of U.S. dollars through Iraq's financial networks, Iran's presence has been both overt and subtle in shaping Iraq's economic policy. The recent U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear sites are interpreted by some as a significant blow not only to Iran's strategic capabilities, but also to its influence over Iraqi institutions. This shift in power dynamics could provide the breathing room that Iraq's reformers, those aligned with the IMF, World Bank, and Western-backed economic stabilization programs, need to push forward with confidence. Mark Z mentions that he remains somewhat conflicted. On one hand, the signals from his contacts, three of whom are reportedly deeply embedded in groups directly involved in the RV process, are highly optimistic. These contacts have referred to the recent events as the best development to happen in a long time, likening it to the best thing since sliced bread. This enthusiastic analogy reflects their belief that the geopolitical shift following the Iran strikes is the final stage before Iraq can move ahead with revaluing the dinar. Their optimism seems to be tied to observable behaviors. These contacts, according to Mark Z, are once again traveling this week, a pattern that in the past has signaled imminent movement in the RV timeline. In RV circles, travel among key players often means meetings, signing of documents, or positioning to be ready when the go signal is given. Delving deeper, there's a strategic logic to the idea that chaos in Iran might translate to accelerated reform in Iraq. One of the key barriers to Iraq's financial liberation has been Iran's manipulation of Iraq's dollar auction system. For years, billions of U.S. dollars meant for legitimate commercial imports in Iraq were being funneled through sanctioned networks controlled by Iranian-aligned militias and political actors. This loophole allowed Iran to skirt U.S. sanctions and continue funding its regional ambitions. Recent crackdowns by the U.S. Treasury and the Central Bank of Iraq, CBI, have begun to close these channels, enforcing stricter compliance with SWIFT systems and anti-money laundering protocols. The continued weakening of Iran's grip, now possibly hastened by these recent strikes, could finally create an environment where Iraq can assert monetary sovereignty. Moreover, the Iraqi government and its central bank have been moving swiftly in recent months to fulfill IMF and World Bank conditions necessary for financial normalization. These steps include digitizing salary payments, ending paper currency transactions, enforcing KYC, Know Your Customer, standards, launching the Visa and MasterCard integrations across state-owned banks, and aligning the foreign currency market with international norms. There is widespread belief among observers that these reforms were intentionally timed to precede a rate change, perhaps signaling the country's readiness to exit the artificial dual exchange rate regime and move toward a more realistic valuation of the dinar. If the Iranian factor has been the final barrier, then its sudden disruption could mean the last obstacle has fallen. There's also the human factor. Millions of Iraqis, weary of hardship, corruption, and decades of instability, have pinned their hopes on the economic promises of the RV diaspora communities. Veterans, and global investors alike are watching Iraq's reform trajectory with a mix of hope and skepticism. The psychology of the moment matters. If the leadership in Iraq, especially Prime Minister Soudani and CBI Governor Alak, believe that this is their best chance to move forward before a potential shift in regional power balances or global financial realignments, they may act boldly. Conversely, if they believe the risk of escalation is too high, they may pull back, even if everything else is ready. Mark's message thus sits at the crossroads of hope and realism. He is relaying the signals, the travel patterns, the insider conversations, and the emotional climate within the groups closest to the revaluation mechanism. His contacts are optimistic. They are mobilizing, positioning, and preparing. To them, the attack on Iran was not just a military maneuver, it was a domino falling in a long chain of events that now allows Iraq to shed external interference and reclaim its financial independence. Yet, Mark's inner conflict echoes that of many in the community. Can this moment really be different? The community continues to wait, monitor, and prepare. There's a sense that the RV is no longer a far-off fantasy but something tangible, discussed at serious levels, coordinated with international financial institutions, and aligned with global efforts to stabilize the Middle East economically. If the situation with Iran becomes a pivotal turning point, it will be because it cleared the final political and security hurdle, allowing Iraq to walk into a new chapter of monetary sovereignty. If not, it may simply be another dramatic twist in a long and winding road. Either way, the coming days and weeks may offer more clarity than ever before. Thanks for tuning in to Iraqi Dinar Update. If you found this content helpful, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a beat on Iraq's evolving financial landscape. Stay informed and stay ready.